A nationwide general strike emptied the streets of Haiti's capital Port-au-Prince on Monday, with organizers denouncing the rapidly worsening insecurity situation. The people of Chile are taking to the streets across the country to mark 2 years since the outbreak of major protests and social unrest. Iran's president on Monday said that the United States should lift the sanctions on his country to prove it is serious about restarting nuclear talks. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your host, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. A nationwide general strike emptied the streets of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, on Monday, with organizers denouncing the rapidly worsening security situation. Brazen criminal gangs, which carry out regular kidnappings for ransom, are reported to control much of the capital as lawlessness mounts in the Western Hemisphere's poorest nation. Shops, schools, and government buildings were shuttered in the city on Monday, but schools were open in several other towns around the country, according to local media. The call for strike action was launched last week by business and professional groups. The assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July has only plunged the country into further uncertainty as the political crisis shows no sign of abating, while Haitians struggle to survive.
We must fight insecurity and kidnapping in the country. We cannot continue with the leaders who are responsible towards the youth and the whole country. We live, but it's as we aren't living anymore. We are insecure in every way: financial insecurity, economic insecurity, food insecurity. They are putting us in a position of normalization of insecurity. We cannot continue in a situation like that.
We move on to other topics. Venezuelan diplomat Alex Saab, kidnapped by the United States and being held in a maximum security prison, has reiterated that he will not collaborate with the government of that country. The statements came in a letter to his wife, Camila Fabrizab, which she read during a public act of support for the diplomat in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. Saab reiterated that he was kidnapped by the U.S. government and subjected to torture, as well as cruel and degrading treatment with which the authorities of Cape Verde, where he was previously held, cooperated. Additionally, his wife recounted how the Cape Verdean authorities violated due process and warned within minutes of handing Saab over the extradition process had begun. In view of this situation, Saab held the government of the United States and the extremist opposition led by Juan Guaido responsible for his physical integrity, and also ratified that he is in full possession of his faculties to face trials.
I want to make it clear that I have nothing to collaborate with the United States, that I have committed no crime in the United States or in any other country. I declare that I am sane, that I am not suicidal, in case I am murdered and they say I committed suicide. What bothers the United States the most, what bothers them the most is that my husband, Alex Saab, will never bend, never.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros on Monday denounced the outgoing government of Cape Verde for complicity in the kidnapping of Venezuelan diplomat Alex Saab, noting the move came just before another administration was elected in the West African country.
There was no extradition order. A plane landed with the complicity of the outgoing government of Cape Verde. I say outgoing because yesterday there were elections and the government lost the elections. They were won by the opposition of Cape Verde that defended an equal and fair treatment for Alex Saab. The outgoing government paid for it by losing the elections. Its betrayal, the torture, and the damage done to Alex Saab lost the elections. The people of Cape Verde got rid of the government and the corrupt elite of the current president of Cape Verde, the prime minister of Cape Verde, the magistrates of the Constitutional Court of Cape Verde, cowards and corrupt, cowards and corrupt.
Venezuelan diplomat and special envoy Alex Saab appeared in a Florida court on Monday, a day after he was extradited to the United States from Cape Verde, despite the fact that there is no extradition treaty between the two countries. In the Miami federal court, Saab was denied bail after prosecutors claimed he was at flight risk, which should be jailed until trial. The next hearing to present the charges was scheduled for November 1st. Saab was on a mission to secure support for Venezuela in the face of the crippling U.S. sanctions in June 2020, when he was arrested in the West African country of Cape Verde during a plane stopover. In response to what the Venezuelan government called his kidnapping, the delegation to the talks with the opposition sectors in Mexico announced it will not participate in the latest round. And the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, People's Trade Treaty, issued a communiqué on Monday in which it categorically rejects the interference of imperialist powers in the electoral process of Nicaragua. The statement comes in response to recent declarations of United States government officials as the attacks on Nicaragua intensify as it gears up for general elections in November. According to the Albo Black, in flagrant violation of the principles and purposes of the Charter of the United Nations, U.S. officials continue attacking the legitimate government of the sister Republic of Nicaragua, promoting attempts at destabilization. All but TCP member states also call attention to and condemned the flagrant interference of the pro-imperialist Organization of American States in the country, noting this body has never defended the interests of the Latin American peoples. Likewise, they ratified support for the Nicaraguan president, Daniel Ortega, and the Nicaraguan people. We'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. In the framework of the second anniversary of the outbreak of major protests and social unrest across Chile, known as the 2019 social outburst, a series of nationwide mobilizations were planned this Monday as the opposition to the neoliberal government of President Sebastián Piñera intensifies. The government deployed more than 5,000 security agents in order to contain the mobilizations, not an unexpected move in a country where state repression is widespread, as seen over the past 2 years. More than 50 demonstrations were called throughout the country, while the infamous National Police Force planned to saturate what they considered risk zones. Among them, the square dubbed Resistance Square by protesters in the capital Santiago, which has become a rallying point for anti-government mobilizations. Protesters are calling for justice for the victims of state repression, the release of political prisoners, and the resignation of President Piñera over his role in the repression and the recent revelations contained in the Pandora Papers investigation. A natural treasure of the northern Pacific coast of Chile is under threat by the Dominga mining project linked to Sebastián Piñera in the Pandora Papers investigation. The Humboldt archipelago is a refuge for unique species of fauna, including a particular type of penguin, and otter to the brink of the extinction. However, the fragile ecosystem is under threat, according to environmentalists, due to the $2.5 billion mining projects of the nearby mainland. Locals in Punta de Choros have survived off sustainable fishing in the area for generations. The Dominga mining project in the Coquimbo region is also at the center of a corruption scandal that could topple President Sebastián Piñera. As the Pandora Papers revealed, he not only sold the company to a friend in the tax haven of the British Virgin Islands, but that the deal included a clause that stated the final payment was dependent on not establishing an area of environmental protection in the area of the mining company's operations.
For us, the Dominga Mining Company is the destruction of our culture, our ancestral culture, the culture of the Shango people, the culture that has been already prevailed for more than 10,000 years in these territories, living in an integral and sustainable way with our environment. The issue is that this company wants to settle in a place that is a treasure of global importance from the point of view of biodiversity. Scientists around the world have recognized that there is no place like this on the planet, and that obviously means that there is a unique diversity that lives there. Many species that are threatened, some even in danger of extinction, but it is not only biodiversity, it also has to do with local productive activity. It seems to me that what is happening in Dominga is not just a scandal at the political level due to corruption, due to the illegalities that we have seen, and now due to the new antecedents that link the president. It is directly an attack against nature on this planet that is in crisis.
And representatives of 25 communities in Chiquimula, Guatemala, have declared themselves in permanent resistance to illegal mining on common lands by a company that responds to the interest of international corporations. We have more in the following report by our correspondent, Santiago Bodon.
Several paintings are displayed in these highlands of the department of Chiquimula to make visible the resistance against the mining exploitation and communal lands carried out by the company Pato GTSA, whose message is not to mining, yes to life. Communities in resistance. Why we have adopted this position? Because we have seen that in different hours of the night and early morning they have been extracting material in all illegal manner. According to the locals, illegal mining is taking place in the community of El Pato, located on the Tujarang hill in Chiquimula, the main source of water for the department. They were loading material. What kind of material? Well, we don't know, but they did transport many truckloads of material.
The spring that is here in Tahuran, where we have the water here for the community, has diminished too much because there's no longer enough water for all the houses.
The legal defense of these 25 affected communities claims that it was able to determine that the mining company is operating illegally. There is no authorization for exploitation. What they had was an authorization for exploration, nothing more. Mining at El Pato is part of several projects linked to Goldex resources and other international extractive industries as determined by the Observatory of Extractive Industries. There are Canadian interests on the southern side, Russian interests on that side, US interests to the north, and in several of these areas there are confirmed illegal operations. For example, here in the south, Canadian interests operate without licenses, without environmental impact studies. The resistance of rural communities in Chiquimula re-emerges in a context where Pope Francis called on extractive industries to respect life and stop their destructive actions.
Santiago Botón, Telesur Oriente de Guatemala.
We thank you, Santiago, for this report, and now we have more news. The Minister of Government of Bolivia, Eduardo del Castillo, denounced an assassination attempt against President Luis Arce, orchestrated by the former defense minister of the de facto regime of Yanin Áñez. According to the revelations, the de facto defense minister, Fernando López, plotted to contract mercenaries from the United States to assassinate Luis Arce in order to prevent him from taking up the presidency and the movement towards socialism from coming to power, overturning the results of the country's October 2020 election. The Bolivian Minister of Government urged the extremist sectors of the opposition to desist from such acts. Some of the same mercenaries who were identified went on to be involved in the assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. The Minister of Government of Bolivia also stressed that opposition sectors linked to the plot to organize an assassination attempt against the president-elect Luis Arce continue to plan acts of destabilizations.
We have been working on the president's security since he was a candidate. The first risk that the movement towards socialism had was that they would allow us to participate in the elections. The second risk that we had, and at that time all the Bolivian people as well, is that they let him take office as president of the plurinational state of Bolivia. And the third risk was that they let him rule this country. We are seeing that there are still a group of people who want to destabilize the government and are planning new actions to destabilize this country and not have a president.
Almost 20 million Brazilians have declared that they spend 24 hours or more without having anything to eat on any given day. Another 24.5 million are not sure if they will be able to eat on a daily basis and have already reduced the quantity and quality of what they eat. Another 74 million live unsure of whether they will go without food. According to a survey by the Brazilian Research Network on Food and Nutritional Sovereignty and Security, more than half of Brazilians suffer from some type of food insecurity in December 2020. These numbers were registered before the inflationary spike in recent months, which has only aggravated the situation. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back from the South. Iran's president on Monday said the United States should lift the sanctions on his country to prove it is serious about restarting nuclear talks. In an interview with a state TV, President Ebrahim Raisi said Iran is seeking goal-oriented talks with the West and added that Iran has never left the negotiation table. He stressed that lifting the sanctions will be an indication of seriousness on the part of the other side. After 6 rounds of talks between Iran and the European signatories to the 2015 nuclear deal, alongside Russia and China, the negotiations have been stalled since June.
The talks must have results for the Islamic Republic of Iran. Regarding the other party, its readiness to lift the sanctions could be a sign that is serious. The sign that the other party is serious is the removal of the sanctions. The rulers of Afghanistan must stand against the crimes ISIS is committing in that country, killing Muslims. They must know that a serious move is not taken against ISIS and it is not destroyed in the region. It will pave the way in creating interference to many regional countries and will commit crimes, and our future in this region will be a very bad one.
Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian and his Venezuelan counterpart, Felix Plasencia, held a meeting at the Iranian Foreign Ministry in Tehran on Monday as they too discussed their country's strategic ties. Expressing his pleasure at being in Iran and meeting with President Ebrahim Raisi, the Venezuelan diplomat noted that his country will take part in the joint commission between the two nations in Tehran before the end of the year to draw up a roadmap for their relations, adding that this document will be a long-term plan for cooperation. The Venezuelan foreign minister also reported that President Nicolás Maduro will visit Iran in the coming months, where he will sign a document on cooperation for the following 20 years. Both sides expressed their solidarity in the face of the U.S. sanctions, which impact on both their populations, and strongly condemned the kidnapping of the Venezuelan diplomat Alex Saab and his illegal imprisonment in the United States. Now we address other topics. The Brazilian Parliamentary Commission investigating the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic by the Jair Bolsonaro administration heard the testimonies of relatives of those killed by the virus in Brazil, days before the final report of the investigation is presented. Brazil's Senate on Sunday announced the postponement from Tuesday to Wednesday of the report by the Committee of Inquiry into the alleged criminal acts by the Bolsonaro government during the coronavirus pandemic. Senators said they wanted more time to debate the content of the 1,000-page report. Meanwhile, the vote on the report, which was initially scheduled for Wednesday, will take place on next week on October 26. On Friday, the committee rapporteur announced at least 11 charges against Bolsonaro, including homicide by omission, genocide of indigenous peoples, and crimes against humanity. Analysts agree that the short-term impact of the final report will be symbolic because the Brazilian president still has enough support in Congress to avoid impeachment. And the human rights group Rio de Paz paid tribute to the over 600,000 people killed by COVID-19 in Brazil. Demonstrators placed 600 white handkerchiefs in front of the National Congress in the capital Brasilia, each representing 1,000 deaths. The Senate Commission investigating the government's management of the pandemic has heard testimony of dreadful practices, including irregularities such as the government's delay in buying vaccines for the existence of a parallel cabinet, of doctors and virologists used by President Bolsonaro to advocate drugs with no proven efficacy, and even experiment on patients without their consent.
There are 600 white handkerchiefs that represent the pain of loss because 600,000 Brazilians had their lives interrupted by the pandemic. We are the second country in the world in absolute numbers of death and the seventh in the number of deaths per million people. Who's responsible for this tragedy? Where did we go wrong? There is no doubt that the federal government must be held accountable for its power because it minimized the lethal power of the virus. What do you expect from the Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry? Punishment for the guilty, there is no doubt about it, so that we will never again be treated by public authority as we have been treated in this pandemic. We will conclude that CPI, and God willing, it will not disappoint Brazil. It will show who is really responsible for everything that happened up to now.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.